On the day that my mother passed away, I was just 2-3 weeks away from my 3rd birthday. What I feel the most.
Alex!
The last time we were here, seems like that was the very morning.
The savage knife murder of a young mother in broad daylight stunned detectives in London today.
She was 23 when she died. She was a shining light.
Today's developments bring another twist to the story, but the Common still holds its secret.
The case looked closed. Detectives believed they had found the man responsible for one of Britain's most shocking murders. The public watched as investigators built their case with confidence. Every new development seemed to point in one direction. Then, everything changed. Years later, a single DNA breakthrough shattered what everyone thought they knew. The man at the center of the investigation wasn't the killer. So how did police become so certain? What critical decision sent the investigation down the wrong path? And how did one scientific discovery rewrite the story that Britain had accepted for years?
One officer left the room and he came in with Lizzie James.
Hello, Colin. Remember me?
To understand how this investigation went so wrong, you have to understand the pressure surrounding it. The murder had shocked Britain. Every day without an arrest fueled public outrage. Newspapers demanded answers, families wanted justice, and investigators faced growing calls to find the person responsible, fast. Before long, detectives focused almost entirely on one man. They believed his behavior, psychological profile, and other circumstantial details pointed to it.
4 men were spotted near the scene. Perhaps the most important was the one seen washing his hands in this stream shortly after the murder. He, like the others, hasn't been traced, and the police fear that if it was the killer, he may strike again.
Investigators become so convinced despite the gaps. What details were quietly overlooked? And why did one tiny piece of forensic evidence remain preserved, waiting for technology that didn't yet exist? That overlooked clue would eventually change everything, but not before years had slipped away.
The heart of this story was Rachel Nickell. Rachel was a young mother whose world revolved around her 2-year-old son.
Listen, you can't do the video. Mommy can do the video.
Andre, I'm right up on your
Devoted to her family. Like so many parents, much of her time was spent creating simple, happy moments with the child she loved most. On the morning of July 15th, 1992, she wasn't expecting anything unusual. It was meant to be an ordinary summer day, a chance to enjoy some fresh air and spend time outdoors with her son. There was no sign that within a matter of moments, that ordinary routine would come to a heartbreaking end. No one could have imagined that a simple visit to the park would become one of Britain's most infamous murder cases, a crime that would leave investigators chasing the wrong man while the real killer remained free.
So when did Father Christmas come?
Give me all of this stuff.
When did he come?
Down the chimney.
When?
On the morning of July 15th, 1992, Rachel Nickell set out for a walk across Wimbledon Common with her 2-year-old son, Alex, and the family's dog. It was a familiar routine, one that gave no hint of the tragedy that was about to unfold. As they made their way through the park, witnesses would later remember seeing them. Nothing appeared unusual. It seemed like another peaceful summer morning. Then, the trail went quiet. Moments later, everything changed. Rachel was attacked in broad daylight on one of London's most well-known public commons. Despite the time of day and the location, the attack happened with shocking speed. Her young son survived, but he was left beside his mother at the scene, becoming an unknowing witness to a crime that would horrify the nation. News of the murder spread rapidly across Britain. Parents questioned whether any public place was truly safe. Detectives launched one of the country's largest murder investigations, determined to find whoever was responsible. And before long, investigators became convinced they had their man.
even though the evidence was far less certain than it appeared.
I've been involved in numerous murder inquiries, and I can honestly tell you that this is the most horrendous and vicious attack that I've ever seen.
The investigation quickly became one of the largest murder inquiries Britain had ever seen. Detectives were flooded with thousands of phone calls, witness statements, and possible leads. Every tip was examined, every possibility considered. Somewhere in that mountain of information, they believed the killer had to be hiding. As weeks turned into months, one name kept resurfacing. Investigators became increasingly convinced they were closing in on the right person. His behavior attracted attention, and a psychological profile appeared to strengthen their suspicions. But suspicion alone wasn't enough. Hoping to uncover the truth, detectives approved an extraordinary undercover operation. A female police officer was assigned a highly unusual role: to gradually build a relationship with the suspect, earn his trust, and see if he would reveal something no investigator had been able to obtain. The plan was ambitious. If it worked, detectives believed it could produce the breakthrough they had been waiting for. It didn't. After months of effort, no confession came. No decisive evidence emerged. Instead of strengthening the case, the operation exposed just how little investigators actually had. Prosecutors concluded there wasn't enough evidence to bring charges, and the suspect was released. Questions that had once seemed answered suddenly returned. Had detectives focused on the wrong man from the very beginning? If so, where was the real killer?
Has been found guilty of Rachel's murder. That means in total, he has murdered 2 women, 1 child, raped at least 1 woman, and attempted to rape 2 others. We sincerely hope, whatever the court says, that he will spend the rest of his life in a totally secure environment to protect all other people.
For years, the case remained frozen in time. The man investigators had pursued was never charged. The person responsible for Rachel Nickell's murder had disappeared back into everyday life. And despite one of the largest murder investigations in British history, justice seemed no closer than it had been on the day of the attack. But while the investigation had stalled, science hadn't. Advances in DNA technology gave detectives a chance to examine forensic evidence that had been carefully preserved since 1992. Evidence that couldn't be fully understood when Rachel was killed was now being viewed through an entirely different lens. Then, at last, the breakthrough arrived. The DNA didn't point to the man police had spent years investigating. It pointed to someone else entirely. The profile matched a man named Robert Napper, who had already been linked to another violent crime years after Rachel's murder. As investigators dug deeper, the evidence became impossible to ignore. The DNA recovered from Rachel's case matched his genetic profile. For Rachel's family, the answer they had waited years to hear had finally emerged. Robert Napper was arrested and charged with Rachel's murder. Faced with the overwhelming forensic evidence, he admitted responsibility through a plea of guilty on the grounds of diminished responsibility due to his mental condition. In 2008, he was convicted of Rachel's murder and sentenced to indefinite detention in a high-security psychiatric hospital. In the end, it wasn't the original investigation that uncovered the truth. It was a single piece of preserved forensic evidence and scientific advances that finally gave it a voice.
Eventually, we were looking at 3 separate murder investigations and rape inquiries. Each team has its own strong tribal interior working, and as it happens, I worked with all 3 of them. What they weren't willing to do was to recognize that they were linked. Their position was very simple: you are wrong in that, we want you to help us in these other areas.
When people remember this case, it's easy to focus on the investigation, the mistakes, and the breakthrough that finally uncovered the truth. But at the center of it all was Rachel Nickell, a young mother whose life was cut tragically short, leaving behind a little boy and a family forced to wait years for answers. Those years came at a devastating cost. While investigators pursued the wrong suspect, an innocent man lived under intense public suspicion, and the real killer
remained free. It would take years and remarkable advances in forensic science before the evidence finally revealed what had been hidden all along. The Rachel Nickell case became a turning point in British criminal investigations, reshaping how detectives use forensic evidence, manage major inquiries, and guard against allowing a single theory to overshadow the facts. What do you think? Do you believe the investigation's mistakes delayed justice? Or were detectives simply working within the limits of the forensic technology available at the time? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. And if you enjoy respectful, evidence-based true crime documentaries that explore the details often left untold, consider subscribing for more stories every week. Thank you for watching.